Hello students, today we will discuss about memory hierarchy. So memory is another important component of a computer system that is closely related to the program execution, so that any data can be accessed from the memory through which the processor can access the data and the execution can be done. So memory plays a crucial role in the field of computer and its program or any related execution. So last sessions we were discussing on various aspects of increasing the processing speed by bringing pipelining mechanism as well as bringing some parallelism into the system, where we were focusing on processing and other steps related to the architecture, that is the various processing and other related parallelism implementation. So this session we will be discussing about the various aspects related to the memory management. So initially we will be discussing about the cache memory, which is the most closer memory that is placed within the computer system, that is the closest memory near to the processor. So assume that this is the processor, which is the central part of the system. Then we are having the main memory available separately. This is called as main memory and this is called as the processor. Normally a processor, if it wishes to do some execution, it requires some data. Normally it will go and access the data from the primary. So this memory actually indicates primary memory. Primary memory, the data normally that is to be accessed. But normally for many of the computer system we are having a system that is residing in between the processor and the primary memory, which is called as a cache. So cache is normally a small memory where we can hold only few set of data and which is situated closer to the computer processor, that is the central processing unit. So whenever the processor want to access some data, it will be initially looking at the cache memory, and if the data is available within the cache, it will take the data and do processing on the data that is collected from the cache memory. But if it is not available within the cache, it will go and check into the primary memory. So the placement of cache is actually to avoid the time delay between the processor access the data from the primary memory. So if every data to be accessed from the primary memory, it will take some more time. But if you are having a faster memory, that is a small memory which is situated closer to the processor, if the data can be accessed through that, our entire execution speed can be increased. So we will see the details. A cache, it is the name given to the highest or first level of the memory hierarchy. So nearer to the processor we are having the highest or first level of memory, which is called as cache. Then only we are having the primary memory, then we are having the secondary memory. This is the secondary memory. So if the data is required, it will initially go and check in the cache memory. Now if it is not available in the cache memory, it will go and check in the primary memory. Now if it is not available in this primary memory, it will go and check in the secondary memory. So from secondary to primary the data will be placed, and from primary memory to cache the data will be placed, and from cache the data will be taken into the processor. So this is the internal procedure happens with a system, a processor that is having a cache nearer to that, and it need to access some content or data from the primary memory. the term cache is now applied whenever buffering is employed. So normally we are using the term called as buffering. Buffering means the temporary holding of data. So it is usually happening with the cache memory. So if some data is being downloaded, so it will be locally downloaded within the cache. Some buffering, normally something is being downloaded. If you are playing some video through YouTube and all, it is showing some buffering, means it is actually accessing the data into the cache memory. So we are using the term buffering. It is actually associated with the cache memory. We are having several types of caches available, like file caches, that is used for storing various files. Then we are having name caches, which is used for storing the names of various components present in the computer system. Now we are using some terms related to the cache. That is, one is called as a cache hit. A cache hit indicates if the processor need to access the data and if it is available in the cache, then it is called as a cache hit. The required data is available within the cache means cache hit happens. That means the data is available. The cache miss means, the second term, cache miss means if a data is required by the processor and if it is looking into the cache and if the data is not available in the cache, it will have a cache miss. So automatically, if there is a cache miss, the processor need to do some additional operation like go and collect the data from the primary memory, which is usually called as miss penalty. So if the data is missing in the cache memory, some penalty, some extra task to be done in association with the primary memory. Now cache uses the concepts of principle of locality. That means there are two types of principle of locality concepts. That is, one is temporal locality and second one is spatial locality. Temporal locality means it is related to time. That means the most recently used data are stored inside the cache memory. So as I said before, cache memory is a very small memory. So we cannot place more data inside the cache memory. So temporal locality based cache memory will hold the data which was used recently based on the time. So the recently used data will be available within the cache. So normally we are having a tendency to access the same data which was used recently. That is why we are using temporal locality concept. Then next one is spatial locality. Spatial locality is related to the place where the data is residing. So temporal related to the time and spatial related to the location. That means space where the data is residing. So nearly used and spatial means the nearly, that is based on the location where the data is actually being placed. So based on these two concepts, we are having the usage of cache memory within our computer system. We will be describing about more details about the cache performance and other additional details related to the usage of cache memory. Now the time required for the cache miss. So cache miss is the situation when the required data is not available within the cache memory. So the time required for the cache miss depends on both the latency and bandwidth of the memory. So if it is a cache miss, we need to have the access of the same data from the primary memory. So there we need to consider two factors. One is the latency and second one is the bandwidth of the primary memory. So what is this latency? Latency determines the time to retrieve the first word of the block. So if this is the primary memory and this is the cache and this is the processor, if there is a cache miss, it will go and check the data from the primary memory. So some time will be taken during these between this cache and primary memory, check whether the data is available there, and retrieve the first word, whichever data is required, retrieve the first word of that particular block, and until that whatever time we are wasting there, which is called as the latency. Now second point is the bandwidth, that determines the time to retrieve the rest of the block. So the time taken for getting the first word is called as latency, and the rest of this block, the remaining words, the time taken for retrieving the remaining portion of this block is actually called as bandwidth. So the cache miss is usually depending on the latency and bandwidth of the memory. So a cache miss is handled by hardware. So if the data is not available within the cache memory, it will be handled by the hardware, and it causes processors using in order execution. Normally they will do pause the execution or stall the execution. So we were using stall, means execution stall, memory stall, etc. in our previous session. So if the data is not available within the cache memory, so data is not available, so currently executing that operation, that instruction will be under stall. It is to wait until the data is available from the primary memory. So normally if a cache miss occurs, there is a chance of having a stall. Now one method to evaluate cache performance. So we are going to consider about the performance of cache. It is to expand the processor execution time equation, which we have already explained in our module 1 of computer architecture. Now if you modify that processor execution time, now we can give a different equation for CPU execution time, that is CPU clock cycles plus memory stall cycles into clock cycle time. So previously it was like CPU clock cycles into clock cycle time. Now one more field is being added with CPU clock cycles, that is the total memory stall cycles. So how many cycles are being wasted for accessing the memory, plus the total CPU clock cycle into cycle, that is clock cycle time, whether it is 1 nanosecond or like that, that clock cycle time is being multiplied with the total clock cycle into clock cycle plus the memory stall cycles. Now this equation assumes that the CPU clock cycles include time to handle the cache hit. So CPU, so if the data is available within the memory, that means a cache hit is usually part of CPU clock cycle, and that the processor is stalled during a cache miss. Now if it is a cache miss, the processor is stalled. So the assumption given into the CPU execution time is like the CPU clock cycle include the time to handle a cache hit. So if the data is available, that will be processed, which is part of CPU clock cycle, and then the processor will be stalled if there is a cache miss. Now from there onwards only we are having the clock cycle which is taken for memory stall cycles. Now the number of memory stall cycle depends on both the number of misses. So if you are having more misses, we will be having more memory stall cycles will be created, and if there is a miss, there will be some cost for each miss. So we need to consider the cost per miss. If you are having some 10 misses, so the total cost for each miss will also be considered for evaluating the stall cycle. so which is usually called as the extra cost that is used for each cache miss is usually called as miss penalty. So the additional operation, that means for accessing the data from the primary memory, that is actually called as miss penalty. Now memory stall cycles, which is part of the previous CPU execution time, can be defined as the total number of misses into miss penalty. The total number of misses so total memory cycle will be evaluated as the number of misses. If there is a miss of 5, number of misses is 5, which will be multiplied with miss penalty, the time taken for getting the data. For example, if it is 10, it will be like 10 into 5, that is 50 memory store cycles will be created. Number of misses into miss penalty. So number of misses means total number of misses. Miss penalty means the time taken for completing that entire means for accessing the data from the primary memory. So additional action to be done after missing the data from the cache, which can again be equalized as insertion count, that it depends on number of misses is depending on the number of insertion, that is insertion count into misses per instruction into miss penalty. So the same equation is being expanded here, which is again equivalent to insertion count into memory accesses per instruction. So total number of memory accesses per instruction, to which we'll consider the miss rate into miss penalty, which is actually the formula used for evaluating the memory stall cycles. Now what is this miss rate? Miss rate is the number of accesses that miss, the total number of accesses that miss the data from the cache divided by the total number of accesses. So we are having total 10 accesses through in which 5 are miss. So number of accesses that miss divided by the number of accesses, which is taken as the miss rate. So here it will be 0.5, which is the miss rate, and that will be multiplied with the miss penalty for calculating the total memory stall cycles. Now normally the miss rates can be measured with a special simulator called as cache simulator, which can take the address trace of the instruction and also the data references. Then it will simulate the cache behavior to determine which references hit and which was the miss. So we can do simulation on the working of cache and getting the cache hit as well as cache misses, and we can do evaluation on various aspects of this cache memory. Then it will report the total number of hit and total number of miss. Then we consider this miss penalties for two operations, like normally we are using read and write on memory. So most of the time we will be collecting the data from the cache memory. We are doing read operation mostly than write operation, but we are doing both. So for example, if you do a program, most of the time we are reading the data, and finally we are writing one data, because after the execution we need to print the data or we need to submit the data. So the most common operation is read, and a very rare operation is write operation when we consider any system. So when we consider these two factors like reads and writes, the total memory stall clock cycle can again be evaluated as insertion count into reads per instruction into read miss rate. So we'll consider a read operation separately, total number of reads per instruction into read miss rate. So how many reads are being missed into read miss penalty. If it is a miss, what is the additional cost, plus instruction count into writes per instruction, total number of writes per instruction into how many writes are miss, and the additional cost which was occurred for handling the write miss. So the total memory clock cycle can also be defined as instruction count into read per instruction into read miss rate into read miss penalty plus instruction count into writes per instruction into write miss rate into write miss penalty. Now normally we simplify the complete formula by combining reads and writes, so that is why we are having the previous formula which was given before, like instruction count into memory accesses per instruction, whether it can be read or write, whatever it be, total memory accesses per instruction into miss rate into miss penalty. So both these are same, but we are considering the reads and writes together into a single formula for calculating memory stored cycles. Now some designers will do measuring miss rate as misses per instruction. So previously we are discussing about memory stall cycle. Now some designers are using this evaluation in terms of misses per instruction. So misses per instruction is equivalent to miss rate into memory accesses divided by instruction count, which is again equivalent to miss rate into memory access per instruction. So some designers are following in this format. They are evaluating the performance of the cache memory. Now the advantage of misses per instruction. So this is like the previous case. Misses per instruction is actually independent of the computer hardware, and the drawback is that the misses per instruction, that is this format, is architecture dependent. So when we use this measure for evaluating cache performance, when the designer uses misses per instruction for evaluating cache performance, it is actually implemented by using, or it is independent of hardware. So misses per instruction is nowhere related to the hardware, but it is related to the underlying computer architecture, that is depending on the length of the instruction, the type of the instruction, and the complication of the instruction. So misses per instruction are most popular with architects working with single computer family, that is for single PC operation and all. They are commonly following the misses per instruction for evaluating the performance of cache memory. Now we are considering 4 memory hierarchy questions in terms of this processor, then cache, then the primary memory. So this is the way in which they are being connected: processor, cache, then memory. Okay, so we are having 4 questions related to this memory hierarchy. First one is block placement. So block means a piece of data, that is a block of data that is to be placed. So block placement, where can a block be placed in the upper level? So in this cache memory we are having several spaces available. So one block which is taken from this memory, where it can be placed? That is one question. We will see in detail. Now second question is how a block can be identified, or how we can find a particular block from the cache memory. So I need to access a particular block, so how I can identify that particular block from the cache memory? So that is the second question. Similarly, the third question is which block should be replaced on a miss if the processor is looking for a data, and if it is not available here, the data to be taken from primary memory, but if there is no space, something to be replaced, move one block into primary memory and take the required data from memory to the cache memory. So from here, from cache, which block should be replaced if one data is missing from the cache memory and that is to be accessed from the primary memory? So that is another memory hierarchy questions. And finally we are having the write strategy. So what are the different operations to be done, or when we do final writing, when we do writing the result into the memory, which is to be permanently stored. So what are the different strategies used for writing the contents into memory? So these 4 memory hierarchy questions are rising when we are using the processor along with the cache and a primary memory, which is crucial for the execution of any program which is part of a computer system. First question, block placement. Where can a block be placed in a cache? So if each block has only one place it can appear in the cache, the cache is said to be direct map. So first placement strategy is direct map. Direct map. So I'll show you one diagram. Direct map. So here this is the primary memory. Primary memory consists of number of blocks starting from 0, 1, 2, 3. One example is given, 8, 9, 10, 11 up to 31. So 32-bit primary memory is shown here. 32-bit primary memory is shown here. So we are having several blocks available, and assume that this is the cache. So we are having different formats of cache. This is the cache, it is using one placement strategy. This is the cache that uses another placement strategy, and this is the block, this is the cache that uses another placement strategy. So now I was discussing about direct map. So this is the direct mapped placement strategy. Here what is happening is, normally cache is of very small size, memory is of larger size. So assume that this is an 8 block cache. We are having totally 8 blocks available, and in the direct map, so assume that this 12 from the primary memory, 12th block from the primary memory to be placed in this particular cache. So you can see that this 12 is placed in the 4th location of this cache memory. So how it is being done? It is done by using the total number of, or the block number, block address modulus the total number of blocks available within the cache memory. So the address, the frame number, the block number that is to be placed in this cache memory is 12. 12 modulus 8. 12 modulus 8. 8 is the total number of blocks available in this cache. We are getting a value 4, and in this location the element can be placed. This is the way how direct mapped placement strategy works. Okay, so the evaluation for direct mapped strategy, that means block address modulus number of blocks in the cache memory. So this is the first method for the placement of data into the cache from the primary memory. Now the second category is called as fully associative. Fully associative. If a block can be placed anywhere in the cache, if a block can be placed anywhere in a cache, which is called as fully associative placement strategy. So again I want to place this 12 into the cache memory. Now it can be placed anywhere. It can be placed anywhere, depends on the availability of block. Whichever block is available, it can be placed anywhere. Fully associative. So any either 12 can be placed in 0th location, or 12 can be placed in 6th location, 5th, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, or 7th. Any location can be used for the storage of this block number 12. That is called as fully associative. So block 12 can go anywhere within the cache memory, which is another placement strategy that is used in cache. Now we are having a third category that is called as set associative. if a block can be placed in a restricted set of places in the cache is called as set associative cache. Now we will look into the diagram once again. The same thing. Now this is the cache with 8 blocks available. Now it is divided into some number of sets. Each set consists of 2 blocks. Set 0 consists of 2 blocks, set 1 consists of 2 blocks, set 2 consists of 2 blocks, set 3 consists of 2 blocks. So the cache is entirely divided into some number of sets. Sets can be of any size. Now it is considered 2, sometimes it can be 3 or 4. Divide the total cache into some number of sets by connecting different blocks together. Now we need to place this block into this particular cache. So where it is to be placed? Now it is to be placed in any of these sets. So that is why it is called as set associative. So here it was fully associative, means anywhere it can be placed, in any block it can be placed. But here first thing we need to find out a particular set, and within that set it can choose either any one of the block. So if set 0 is being selected, this 12 can be placed either in 0 or first block. So first we need to find out the corresponding set. So for that we need to do an evaluation. We need to find block address modulus 4. This 4 is the total number of sets available, that is 4 sets available. Now 12 modulus 4, we are getting 0. So set 0 will be selected and this block can be placed in set 0, which consists of 2 blocks 0 and 1, and it can be placed in any of these 2 blocks. That is called as set associative blocks. So 3 placement strategies. One is fully associative, second one is direct map, and third one is set associative block placement strategy. Now if there are n blocks in a set, the cache placement is called n-way set associative. Now here it was initially it was fully associative, then we had set associative which was given 2-way. Now it can be n-way set associative. We can have multiple number of sets available with different number of blocks. So n-way set associative. Now each cache will be having an address tag also, on which block frame, with each block frame will be having an address tag. So within a cache each block frame will be having, so each block frame will be having an address tag. It will identify the address of that particular block. So what is the requirement of that? So that address is called as block address. All possible tags are searched in parallel because speed is a very critical factor in case of cache, because cache is actually considered as the closest memory in which we need to access the data very fastly. Then there will be a valid bit which is added to the tag. So there is a tag associated with each block, and it consists of block address as well as it consists of a valid bit which is used to indicate that whether that block consists a valid address or not, whether the entry contains a valid address or not. So each cache, each block consists of a tag with an address and a valid bit that indicates whether it consists of a valid address or not. If the address is wrong, the access will not be permitted. So we need to consider whether the bit associated with each block tag is having a valid bit. Now we are having the address which was mentioned in the block, and the address is again divided into the address and the offset. So if this is the block, first this address will be identified, from which we need to have an offset from that address, how far the actual data is residing. That is called as offset. And also the address can be divided into the tag field and index field. So there will be a tag field, and it also consists of an index field that is used to refer to the address of that particular block. So this was block identification. So by using block address and address tag, and by using valid bit, we can identify a particular block. So we require a tag associated with each block so that we can identify a particular block by giving the address and by looking at the valid bit field associated with the address tag. So this is the way how we are identifying a particular block present in a cache. Now we are having block replacement. So when we require block replacement, whenever there is a miss, if the data is missing in the cache, something to be replaced, so the existing content from the cache to be moved back to the primary memory and take the data or block from the primary memory to the cache memory. So which one can be selected for replacement? So whenever a miss occurs, the cache controller must select a block to be replaced. With direct mapping means it is to be placed in a particular location. Okay, block address modulus total number of blocks. Only one block frame is checked for a hit, and only that block can be replaced. So if you are following direct mapping cache mechanism, from that directly selected block should be replaced. But with fully associative or set associative, that means we are selecting some block, or means it can be placed anywhere among the set of blocks available. There are many blocks to choose from a miss, so we'll be having more options available. Only for direct mapping, only one block can be replaced, but for all others we need to select. We are having options whether the first block or second block or third block which is to be replaced from the and some other data to be taken from the primary memory. So there are three strategies used for the block replacement. One is called as random replacement. So among the set of blocks available, randomly it will select one block number. So it will be using some system, means some program that generates a pseudo random number. Accordingly it will select the corresponding block, and that will be replaced by the new one. Then second one is least recently used. So if the cache consists of some block which is not being used recently, that means least recently used block will be replaced and the new one will be added into the cache memory. And the last one is first in first out, that is FIFO. So whichever block arrived first will be replaced, means whichever come earlier will be replaced first, and the new block can be added into the cache memory. So that is about block replacement. Now the fourth question is write strategy. What happens to a write? So as you know, read dominates processor cache accesses. Most of the time the operations that happens is read operation. All information accesses are reads, and most of the instructions will not write into the memory. I was mentioning that before. The block can be read from the cache at the same time that the tag is read and compared. So the tag, initially it will check for the tag for the address, and in the meantime it will read the block content and it can be selected. So both can be done simultaneously. So the block read begins as soon as the address is available. So as soon as the tag is being compared, the data can also be done quickly. If the read is a hit, if the expected data is available, the requested part of the block is passed on to the processor immediately. So it will directly given to the processor, and it will be used for doing the execution. And in the case of write operation, modifying a block cannot begin until the tag is checked to see if the address is a hit. So if there is a write, we need to identify the proper address of the block to which the data to be written. So that is to be guaranteed. But in the case of read, it will just see whether the requested data is available, then directly the data can be taken and it can be used for doing further operations. Now there are two options with the write operations used in cache. One is write through and second one is write back. So after the completion of processing, when we go for writing the final result into the memory with the support of cache, two possibilities are there. One is write through and second one is write back. When we use write through, the information is written to both the block in the cache and to the block in the lower level memory. So this is the processor, this is the cache, and this is the primary memory. So when we use write through, after the execution, it will write the data into cache and into the primary memory. So the data will be stored in the cache as well as primary memory. Write through, it will write everywhere. But write back means, so just after completing the execution, it will write only into the cache. Maybe after some time it will do further operation and the same data may be modified, again it will be placed into the cache only. So at that time the data won't be moving towards the primary memory. So when it will be moving towards primary memory, it will happen only when it is being replaced. So some situation, if this is to be replaced, that time only that block will be moving towards the primary memory. So two write strategies we are using. One is write through, it will write into cache as well as primary memory. Write back, it will write only into the cache when completes execution, and later when that block is being replaced, the content will be moved back to the primary memory. So in order to reduce the frequency of writing back blocks, so this replacement to be reduced, so we are using a feature called as dirty bit in order to reduce the frequency, the number of writing back block on replacement. So every time replacement happens, it is to be written back. So if the status bit consists of a dirty bit or a clean, it will be having either a dirty bit or it will be clean. If it is clean, the block is not written back on a miss. If it is clean, it is not written back on a miss. If the data is missing, it will not be written back. Okay, so we are having an additional status bit associated with the block, which is used for ensuring that more writing back is permitted. It is permitted only when it is having a proper status bit available. Okay, so we are not going in detail on these factors. It is an additional feature added to the blocks, which is actually applied for controlling the write back when most of the time that replacement happens. Now the advantages of using write back. So when multiple writes within a block that require only one write to the lower level memory. So when it is write back, every time we are not writing into the primary memory, so most of the time it is written into the cache, then only one write to the lower level memory. So memory congestion can be reduced. It uses less memory bandwidth as it is moving data from cache to memory only few situations, so it requires only less memory bandwidth, and it is used for multiprocessors and for embedded applications. These are the advantages of using writing back strategy. Then the advantage of using write through strategy: it is easier to implement than write back, because whenever the result occurs, directly write into the cache as well as primary memory. Now it is having an advantage that the next lower level has the most current copy, so primary memory will be always having the recent copy of the expected data. But in the previous case, we cannot assure, because the recent data is not in the primary memory, it is with cache only. So now here in this situation, we can guarantee that the primary memory will be having the current copy of the data, and it also simplifies the data coherency. That is a problem related to the access of data from cache as well as primary memory. So data coherency will be discussed in detail in some other session later. IO and multiprocess want write back for processor caches to reduce the memory traffic. So most of the IO and multiprocessors they are using write back. Write back is having less memory traffic because it is not always referred to the primary memory, but write through to keep the cache consistent with lower levels of memory hierarchy. So what happens to a write? So while doing write means final writing of the result, by either it will be stored in cache alone initially, later it will move to the primary memory, but in some other situation it will be written into both cache as well as primary memory. When the processor must wait for writes to complete during write through, the processor is said to have write stall. So when the processor is waiting for writes to complete, so in write through it is not only writing into cache, it is also writing into primary memory. So it is waiting for completion of that writing into the secondary memory, so some processor time will be wasted. So we are having a new stall that is called as write stall. It will be affecting our pipelining and all that we were discussing in our previous chapters. Now we need to use some optimization mechanism. So common optimization to reduce write stall is a write buffer. So we can use a temporary location where the write can be done, and immediately after getting the result, it will write the result into the buffer and the processor will continue its execution. That is one solution for controlling this write stalls. It also allows overlapping of processor execution with memory updating. So different execution can be overlapped, as we were discussing in our pipelining, that is dealing with the memory updation. So if it is using a write buffer, it can do optimization of that is it can increase the speed by reducing the write stalls by doing this optimization. Now when we think about misses, so I was mentioning about cache misses. There are different types of misses available, and the measure which is used for dealing with these misses are called as miss rate. So the miss rate can be defined as number of accesses that miss to the number of accesses, the number of misses per number of accesses. So totally 10 accesses was there, in that 2 was a miss. So this ratio is actually called as miss rate. And there are 3 types of misses. One is called as compulsory misses. As the name indicates, this cannot be avoided. So compulsory misses are always there in any system. Compulsory miss is always compulsory. Now the second one is capacity misses. it is the miss because of the lack of capacity. So the data the place is not available. So if that means if such misses are there due to the capacity issue, that miss is called as capacity miss. And the third type of miss is called as conflict miss. Conflict miss happens when the data block elements are placed in wrong addresses, through which some conflict happens and the data will be missing, which is called as conflict miss. So three types of misses: compulsory miss, capacity miss, and conflict miss. So compulsory miss, the very first access to a block cannot be in the cache. So initially, very first after switching on the computer, and if I am trying to access a particular data, initially there will be a miss because the data is not in the cache. It is to be taken from the primary memory. So for every operation, this compulsory miss cannot be avoided. Then capacity miss, if cache cannot contain all the blocks needed, it requires it is having some data which is available, but it is not having all the data available due to the capacity issue. It cannot hold all the data. That time you can have capacity miss. Then conflict, if the block placement strategy is not fully associative, means if it cannot be placed anywhere, conflict misses will occur because of a block may be discarded. That means a block may be discarded from the cache memory and later retrieved if multiple blocks mapped to its set and access to the different blocks are intermingled. So when it is returned back, it may be referring to a wrong block by using a wrong address. So conflict may happen. So one time it was discarded, later when it is retrieved, maybe multiple blocks are mapping into the same address, maybe because of the wrong indication of the actual block where the data was residing. So there will be some conflict happens, so that there will be a chance of having conflict miss. Now regarding cache performance, now the cache performance can be normally evaluated based on the average memory access time. Now whether the cache is performing well or not, it can be based on the average memory access time. So average memory access means average cache memory access time. Now it can be defined as, the average memory access time can be defined as the hit time. So if this is the processor, this is the cache, and this is the primary memory. So hit time means processor initiates an operation, go and check cache memory and get the data back. This is called as cache hit time. So the time taken for accessing the data from the cache memory, hit time. Now miss rate. What is miss rate? Miss rate means the total number of misses per the total number of instruction. Okay, so that is to be considered here, the total number of misses per the total number of instruction. And finally we are having, that is to be multiplied with miss penalty. What is miss penalty? If the data is not available, we need to go and get the data from primary memory and get the data back to the cache memory. So this is the miss penalty. So this is hit time, this is miss penalty, and total miss per instruction, that is called as miss rate. Now average memory access time and processor performance. So there are some questions that is to be discussed. Whether average memory access time due to cache misses predicts processor. So whether it is affecting the whether average memory access time is affecting the performance of the processor. So there are two explanations. First explanation is there are other reasons for stalls, such as contention due to I/O devices using memory. So average memory access time is not only depending on the availability of data, it also depends on the contention, means if there is any issue related to the devices connected to the memory and the processor. so there may be some contention between the devices, some other issues related to the devices. That time also there will be some additional memory stalls. Now designers usually assume that all memory stalls are due to cache misses. So our normal assumption is the memory stalls are due to the cache misses only, since the memory hierarchy typically dominates other reasons for stalls. But be sure to account for all memory stalls when calculating for the final performance. So we need to consider other factors. So not only cache misses, other related memory related issues are also coming when we are calculating the final performance of the processor. So we need to consider not only cache misses, we need to consider the other contention and other related issues also for getting the final performance of the processor. Now second explanation is it depends on the processor. Now if the processor is using in order execution, in order means one after another, step by step, one first, second, third, fourth instruction, if it is executing in that order, the answer is yes. That means it is the memory stalls will be affecting the performance of the processor. The processor stalls during misses and the memory stall time is strongly correlated to the average memory access time. So some explanations given based on different situations when we are comparing the performance of the processor in terms of the memory stalls. Now the CPU time can be now defined as the CPU execution clock cycles, the total clock cycles plus the memory stall clock cycle into clock cycle time. So this is the CPU time when we are having normal CPU clock cycles into clock cycle time. That was the basic definition of CPU time, where we are adding the memory stall clock cycle also, because there will be some delays due to the non-availability of data or because of the cache misses and other related issues. Now the most widely means there is one more question, whether the clock cycles for a cache hit should be considered part of CPU execution. So cache hit means the data is available, whether it is considered as part of CPU execution or part of memory clock cycle. So most of the situation they are using the answer like it is to be considered as part of the CPU execution clock cycle only. It is not related to the memory stall clock cycle. So this is the general thing that is used with many designers. Now cache behavior can have enormous impact on performance. Now various behaviors of cache will be having some performance impact. Cache misses, if the data is not available within the cache, it is having an impact on processor with a lower cycles per instruction and a fast clock. Now if the data is missing, it is having an impact on the situation when the CPI is low and that uses a faster clock. The lower the CPI cycles per instruction for execution, the higher the relative impact of a fixed number of cache miss clock cycles. When we do calculate CPI, the cache miss penalty is measured in processor clock cycles for a miss. So cache miss penalty is measured in processor clock cycles for a miss. If it is a miss, it is when we consider CPI cycles per instruction, we are considering the miss penalty in relation with the processor clock cycles for a miss. The processor with the higher clock rate has a larger number of clock cycles per miss, and because of that a higher memory portion used for CPI. Now minimizing average memory access time is a reasonable goal to reduce processor execution time. So it is always better to reduce the average memory access time, the access of memory. That means we need to reduce the stalls, memory stalls. And that means we need to reduce the cache miss and related issues so that we can have the overall execution time, means the processor execution time can be reduced. Now, miss penalty and out of order execution process. In the case of miss penalty, if the cache is a miss and if there is a penalty to access the data from the primary memory, and if it is following an out of order execution in its pipeline, now it will calculate the memory stall cycles per instruction, which is equivalent to misses per instruction into total miss latency minus overlapped miss latency. So if it is an out of order execution, the memory store cycles per instruction can be evaluated as misses per instruction into total miss latency minus overlapped miss latency. If it is out of order, we need to subtract the overlapped miss latency. So misses per instruction into miss latency only, but total miss latency minus overlapped miss latency. It could be further expanded to account for contention for memory resources in an out of order processor. So here we need to consider the contention also, which may happen because of the IO connected to the memory and processor in between. It is done by dividing total miss latency into latency without contention and latency due to contention. So we can consider both latency without contention as well as the latency due to contention. Now we need to consider, or we need to decide the following. We need to decide the length of the memory latency, the total time taken for memory access, and we need to consider the overlapping also, overlapping between different instructions. So memory latency length means what to consider as the start and the end of the memory operation in an out of order. So we are considering out of order only. Now length of latency overlap means when do we say memory operation is stalling a processor. So when there is an overlapping between different processor, where automatically there is a memory delay for one instruction, the second will be stalled. It is due to the overlapping. So since only committed operations are seen at the retirement pipeline, so only the completed operations will be available at the retirement, means when the pipeline is reaching its final stage. We say that a processor is stalled in a clock cycle if it does not retire the maximum possible number of instructions in that particular cycle. Now if we go for applying an optimization to improve stall time, it may not always improve execution time because of another type of stall hidden behind the targeted stall. We will discuss on that. So we will be applying some optimization to improve the stall time. It will not always improve the execution time. That we will be discussing on various optimization mechanism. For latency, we could start measuring from the time the memory instruction is queued, when the address is generated, and when the instruction is actually sent to the memory system. So for finding the latency, we need to consider the time the memory instruction is queued, the address is generated, when the address is generated, and when the instruction is actually sent to the memory system. The state of the art in defining and measuring memory stalls for out of order processes seems to be very complex, because as it is out of order, because several instructions are overlapped, and if it is not properly, if there are some stalls and all, some out of order execution, because if this is actually being executed second but it is not permitted, this will be moving upwards. So when out of order happens, the memory stalls will be in different way. So the processes are actually complex in situation now, and also the complexity arises because out of order process tolerates some latency due to cache misses without hurting performance. So this is the reason why we are having some complexity arises to the performance of the processor. So we were discussing about the cache memory hierarchy, basic memory hierarchy. Nearer to the processor we are having a cache memory, and after the cache memory we are having the primary memory. So not all the data is directly communicated with the primary memory. So in order to have a faster access, we are having a cache memory, and we were discussing about the different features related to caches, how the cache memory will be accessing data, the different ways in which we can place the data into the cache, how we can identify the data, how we can write the data into the cache, and how we can replace the data that is available within the cache. And also we have seen the cache performance equations, how we can evaluate the performance of cache memory, and based on the evaluation how we can improve or how it will be affecting the performance of the CPU execution. So finally we have introduced some optimization. We need to have some extra thing that is to be added to the existing cache memory, so that we can even better the performance of the entire system processor by enhancing the cache operations by doing some optimization. So in the next session we will be discussing about various cache optimization mechanisms. So that's it for now. Thank you.